Well, our usual sure and certain way of starting is to say nothing, isn't it? And just allow the silence into our space, as it were. Over and over again in this, what I'll call it, spiritual work, we find it's not really a matter of us doing anything or achieving anything or knowing anything, but rather a matter of allowing what is already here to come into our awareness. So it is with this thing of silence. Yes, it helps obviously to stop talking and listen. But it's already here, isn't it? It's everywhere. And if you go out in the street and watch people usually talking, or switch on the radio or something with this, people talk. The silence is obviously there too, the peace that so many people are looking for, this rest. But we don't really allow it in, do we? Don't give it place in our agenda. I received a letter this morning, a sweet letter, and in it someone wrote, ever increasing light. And again that really triggered off this chain of thought that we make so much effort, don't we, to find God, whatever it is we're searching for. So what is it that brings about ever increasing light? I find myself in a very blessed position because, well, week by week, if not day by day, I seem less capable of remembering or doing anything very much. Strength sort of certainly doesn't get more, gets slower. And it really seems that the less I am able to do, the slower my wits function, the better life becomes in a strange way. Hence I'm rather keen these days on that word, the less of me, the more of God. It really seems to just about sum it up. I wonder what caused my friend to write ever increasing light. And I wonder if after being here for a week, if any of Have you, dear people, ones who've been coming to meditate for a while, feel something of that within yourself? And it's not only that sort of light, electric light, it's a lightness and general approach to life. Things seem to happen in a remarkable way, don't they? Extraordinary, really. I do like the way the Bible tells us not to know God or to strive to achieve God, but to trust, to love and to trust. It's rather not a very common word these days, to trust, is it? Often you hear a political commentator talking about trust. Everybody wants people to do things, don't they? Act, change things. Again and again I found myself in the position of sitting before a group of people and expected to say something. What on earth do I say? I've no idea. Sometimes somebody asks a question which pushes me along a bit, but what am I going to say the next minute? I don't know. Do you? I'm not sure. It isn't the only option, really. Once you hear the silly things that come out of my mouth. Makes me squirm to think of some of the things I say. I wish I hadn't, but it's too late then, isn't it? The horse has bolted. Oh dear. Trust, my dears. This mysterious thing we call the presence. God is with us. If we can equate, and I hope you're not losing track of me when I just go back over this little sequence I'm rather keen on of silence, stillness, space, freedom, peace, spirit, all of which of course are invisible and silent, aren't they? Spirit, presence, God, whatever God is. But really, where does one end and the other begin? If silence really is that closely related to God, I'm sort of a bit nervous to say this, but who can say it isn't? But isn't it real to say God is with us? And we can actually, because he's not some nebulous, far away nothing, but it's actually present in this room, this very, I mean, isn't air almost, what is air? If air, silence, air itself. I'll get away from the scientific explanations of what air is, but air is the same thing, isn't it? Or look out of the window at the sky, and the sky. Isn't that the same thing, the infinite sky? The very listening that hears, the sound going on, someone blowing their nose. We can't do anything, we can't blink our eyes without being in it, can we, like fishes in the sea? How can we possibly be closer? Like invisible arms that hold us. When we meditate, to whatever extent we're able to do this, let go of our fixation on body and mind, what happens? Don't we just, at least to some extent, merge into it? And I suppose the more we practice, the more real it becomes for us. What's by immersion? I remember being told how you salt cucumbers. Do you know how cucumbers are salted or preserved? It's very common. Everybody, for some reason, the Russian climate favours the cultivation of these little little small-sized cucumbers that we sometimes call gherkins. So everybody grows these in their backyards, these little cucumbers. And then, because Russians have this long winter with no fresh vegetables, people use these cucumbers for their daily vitamins, and they're an important part of diet. So every woman in Russia knows how to salt cucumbers. Well, how's that done? It's ever so simple. You just put them in a jar with some water, with some salt. And what happens? You just leave it for a few days, and the salt goes into the cucumber. And there you are, salted cucumbers. And they keep all winter. Couldn't be simpler, could it? And isn't this exactly what happens when you meditate? That willy-nilly, whether you like it or not, this whatever it is, what's there when you let go, somehow or other soaks into us, into our silly heads, and somehow produces an effect, doesn't it? Not immediately, it takes time. You were a bit more complicated than a cucumber, but it does penetrate eventually.
Not necessarily.
Yes. Yes, my dears. So perhaps it's not so stupid this advice to feel your feet on the ground and to listen and look, even if we're not very good at it. Because maybe even just a little bit of practice now and again, when we remember, might help to point us in the right direction. Yes, I remember when I first heard that, I suppose a long time ago at school, being almost a bit embarrassed about it. It seemed sort of outside of whatever my understanding was then. There's another sweet little poem sort of connected with this, which I love very much. It goes, Jesus bids us shine with a small, clear light, like a little candle burning in the night. In this world of darkness, we must shine. You in your small corner, and I in mine. And I think that seemed a little bit more digestible. That was a bit more my scale, really, a little candle. To be the light was a bit big, a bit out of my, beyond my, whatever. But again, it's very strange as I approach, I don't really want to call it death, because it isn't death. This is the amazing thing. It's the less of me, because the John Butler is obviously on the way out. And the less of me, the less of body and mind John Butler, I just feel more and more this, which could be called light. And then, well, what is this, you know? Well, it obviously isn't light for one thing. It's heavy, isn't it? It has weight. If I open my mouth and look in the mirror, there's not light in there, is it? It's dark. But somewhere there's this mysterious thing called the soul, isn't it? Which is obviously more in line with what we're talking about, light, isn't it? And when we look in each other's eyes, which is meant to be the window of the soul, certainly on our good days, sometimes we see light, don't we? Often a bit cloudy, but on our best days, I say, sometimes it's marvellous what you see when you look in people's eyes, isn't it? The infinite light, resident in this extraordinary little automaton, really, we call you and me, which is also, of course, a marvellous what? Marvellous instrument, a marvellous, almost indescribable wonder of it. But one thing that we all can be sure of is that it dies. It has a temporary, it's temporary. Again, I'm sorry, I'm going to repeat myself because I think I've said this rather often recently, but just consider your childhood for a minute. It takes a moment to remember, doesn't it, that you were once a child. And where's it gone? Where is it? Look, behind us we've got some little children. Were we once like that? And where's it gone? And where were we when we were, well, some of you still are strong and young and beautiful, but some of us are beginning to fade a bit. Where's it all gone? Where is it? It was real enough at the time, wasn't it? Good God, it was real. Where is it now? So, my dears, there you have, once upon a time it came to pass. Our story. And yet, if we come back, as always, to this fundamental focus of silence, this unchanging dimension, which we could equally call light. One thing which is obvious every time we reconnect with it is that it is constant, isn't it? It doesn't change. As far as we know, it hasn't changed since the beginning of time, or ever will change. It's eternal, isn't it? You are the light. Well, maybe we are. it's actually so, so important just to recognize this. And then we begin to see what it is that takes us away from it. Why do we act so stupidly on occasion? Why do we even deny it and act as though it wasn't there? And weep and wail about the story, the unfolding story. Well, so this is what we call the work. To turn from the unreliable, the transients, to the reliable, what you can trust. Which is what we're told to do. There is a story told in the first chapters of Genesis and the first chapters of the Bible, which I suppose is as good an explanation as you can get. But it may be helpful just to consider, go back, try to remember what it was like to be a little child again, even younger than these two. Think of a little baby in a pram. First thing it does is reach out and clutch something, doesn't it? And the parent usually says, you know, yes, or do you want it, or something like that. So the child begins to operate in the world of yes or no, or like or don't like, or mine or not mine. And hence we fall into what's called duality, which is this world of this or that. And somehow that innocence, that not knowing, just gets forgotten. And we get educated in the world of duality, of choices, good and bad, black and white, difference. The Bible calls it temptation. Of course we are, especially as we get older, we find things we want, don't we? I want it, and somebody else also wants it, so you get, it's mine. You get into tension and conflict. And usually because people know no better, this is encouraged. Why does it happen indeed? Do you know, again, this is another thing that's we've had two really rather marvellous weeks of visitors, and I've been feeling rather overwhelmed by visitors. I really thought I just couldn't cope with any more visitors. I was getting in a bit of a nervous state about it. I just can't cope. But these last two groups of visitors, I can't quite understand why, but I feel really uplifted. I've absolutely loved it. And I feel I've coped very well, at least from my point of view. And I'm really saying, let's have some more. I love doing this. Isn't it funny how things can change? I haven't done anything consciously, but somehow something's happened and changed in me.